Alright, so it was announced that Phineas and Ferb is coming back for 2 more seasons, with 20 episodes each. That's 40 episodes in total, which is just amazing. Now, I can't say I'm surprised by this announcement. People have been calling it for years, especially after the success of their recent movie, which was a comeback in itself. Couple that with the crossover they did on their successor show, and it's easy to see how some people forgot or just straight up failed to realize that Phineas and Ferb actually ended almost 8 years ago. Now, I've been a huge fan of the show since it debuted in 2007, and have become an even bigger fan over the past few years, so believe me when I say I'm very excited about this revival. However, when I messaged my friend, who's also a big fan, he brought up a good point, and that is, can Phineas and Ferb even handle 40 new episodes? Admittedly, this is something I'd wondered before myself. To understand why, let's take a look back at what happened after the show concluded. When the show ended on June 12, 2015, series creators Dan and Swampy moved right into making a new show called Milo Murphy's Law, which began on October 3, 2016. Unlike Phineas and Ferb, Milo's show put some more focus on the story. Even so, it still shared a lot of DNA with its predecessor, so much so that the boys came back for a crossover. The characters lived in the same town, so it was teased that they'd come back sometimes, but that never ended up happening. Instead, the surprising choice was made to keep Perry and Doofenshmirtz as recurring characters. After 2 seasons, Milo's final episode was on May 18, 2019. Then, on August 28, 2020, Phineas and Ferb made another comeback on Disney+, with a brand new movie titled Candace Against the Universe. Moving on, August 12, 2022 saw the release of Dan's latest show, Hamster and Gretel. It was just renewed for a second season, which Dan himself will be busy working on right alongside the new batch of Phineas. Once again, the show shares a similar spirit, and also takes place in the same world. So, with the entirety of Phineas and Ferb, 2 movies, and 2 shows, it's clear to see that the creators have been keeping busy. But this begs the question, can they successfully bring the boys back? Can they really? Well, let's dissect the current situation. Ultimately, my concern lies in the story ideas and their placement in the timeline. As mentioned, the original series already had 4 seasons, consisting of over 220 different episodes. And towards the end of the show's run, you could kind of tell the ideas were getting spread thin.
Hey, remember how we did that super roller coaster? How about a super duper roller coaster?
Even their latest film felt like a retread of the time they saved Candace from an alien planet. This makes me wonder if the team truly has enough new ideas for 40 new episodes. Not only that, but they'll likely need to fit them within the show's formula. You see, Phineas and Ferb was famous for its structure. Almost every episode had a new idea for the boys, a new plot for Doof, a way to tie them together, and an original song to boot. This checklist often forced the staff to create crazy connections, which were always fun to see unfold. However, there have been some critiques that this system was repetitive, and could make the show feel too predictable. Then, of course, there's the elephant in the room.
There's 104 days of summer vacation.
Despite what the theme song says, we know there's over 220 episodes, and almost each one takes place on a separate day. Granted, some of them weren't canon or took place later in the year, but even excluding those, that still leaves well over 200 summer days, which is way more than the established 104. Now, the natural assumption here is that the series just took place over more than 1 year. However, Dan Povenmire says that the show takes place over one single summer. If that's the case, then depending on how the revival is organized, we could be seeing anywhere between 40 to 80 new days added to this already impossible length. You may be thinking then, all they have to do is set these next 2 seasons after the original summer. Problem solved, right? Well, not exactly, since the finale of the show makes this pretty difficult. This is because the final episode shows Doofenshmirtz go through a major change. His daughter Vanessa helps him realize that he wasn't actually evil, just a decent guy pretending to be bad while making petty revenge schemes. This made him turn to the side of good, putting his days of villainy behind him. From here, multiple sources revealed that Doof took a few different directions in life. In 2 standalone specials, he worked as an agent alongside Perry, and was assigned community service as a teacher at his daughter's school. Then he appeared in the successor series, Milo Murphy's Law, where we learn that he became the inventor of time travel, and tried to become an overall do-gooder, while crashing at Milo's house for some time. As we can see, Doof was pretty occupied after the summer ended, and was no longer pursuing the path of evil.
Doofenshmirtz Good Incorporated. I have no idea where that comes from.
This makes it tricky to set new episodes of Phineas in the following year, as this would remove the Perry versus Doof dynamic, which has always been half of the show. At the same time, seeing some episodes past the main summer could be pretty interesting for both sides of the story. I know I'd personally enjoy seeing what antics Doof gets into as a good guy, as well as seeing what the kids can create in school, especially as they get older. However, there is a small problem there, too. In another final episode, we jump forward not 1, but 10 years in the future, where the kids, now teens, are splitting up to go to college. And it's here we learn that some of their friendships might have fallen to the wayside, specifically Phineas and Isabella. While Buford and Baljeet still seem to hang out like normal, the same can't be said for her. Throughout the series, Isabella was known for her crush on Phineas, which was obvious to everyone except for himself. Now, they had some sweet moments, but things were often just played for laughs, and in context, it did make sense since they were only kids. But in this episode, we learn that Phineas stayed clueless for years, and it wasn't until high school that he finally fell for her. But unfortunately, this was also the point when Isabella had given up. Through a sad song, we get to see a decade pass, where eventually she stops coming to his house entirely, and during their final summer, they fail to meet up at all. To many, this sad reveal felt odd and out of character. While it's nice to see that they eventually got together, it seemed to set their following years in stone, leaving not much room for development. This might not have mattered much at the time, since the series was ending, but now we're at a point where new stories can be told, which puts us in a bit of a pickle. So, to summarize my concerns for the comeback, there's already over 220 episodes, 2 movies, 2 similar shows, and a crossover. From a writing perspective, this can make fresh ideas tough to come by, since they've already done so much, and most episodes will need to follow the formula, which may be repetitive as is. From a story perspective, adding more episodes would exceed the 104 days, which has already been well surpassed. But having anything past summer places Doof as a good guy, which disrupts the show's dynamic. We also know that Phineas and Isabella grow distant as they age, eliminating most future story potential there. So, now that we have some key issues laid out, where does the staff go from here? Well, there's a few different ways they could tackle each issue, so let's start out with the length of their summer. How do they explain having over 104 days? Easy enough, they could just not explain it. With this option, they could continue to bulk up the same summer and simply turn a blind eye. Chances are that most people wouldn't notice, and it would allow them to continue the classic formula. At most, I could see a few more tongue-in-cheek jokes being made about it.
I know what you mean, Ferb. It does seem like more than 104 days. Has it only been 3 months? Because I've been adding up all the things we built this summer, and we're way over 150.
And the summer just keeps going on and on. It feels like it's been going on for like 4 years.
Overall though, I hope they don't go with this route, as even though this is just a cartoon, it's one with integrity that's often tried to respect its continuity. So if they do want to try explaining this impossible calendar, then one way they could do it is by blaming magic. Okay, well maybe not magic in the literal sense, but let's say that something stopped the progression of time. Maybe it's a mysterious force, or perhaps a machine made by the boys or Doof. Unknowingly, this would be giving the boys exactly what they've always wanted, a truly endless summer. Then, the team could cap it off with a special of sorts, let's say the day before the last day of summer, where the boys have to decide between an endless vacation or a life that moves forward. This approach could be a good way to keep the status quo while also attempting to explain their endless summer. But if the team wants a more practical approach, then my preferred option would be to just make multiple summers. I think this would give viewers a little bit of everything, with lots of the familiar, just enough new ideas, and plenty of reach for the writers. How so? Let me explain. First off, I think they should go back and retroactively divide the original 220 plus episodes into 2 years. If you exclude the episodes which are non-canon, outside of summer, and/or multi-part stories, then that leaves us with 2 halves, counting at a little over 100 days per summer. I'd say that fits pretty well. I also think that a great divider would be the 3 winter break episodes, since in each one, Doofenshmirtz is seen being evil. As is, this doesn't make much sense in a single summer timeline, as it contradicts his turn to good in the last day of summer finale. So, by splitting the impossible single vacation into 2 that are viable, they can simply place these winter episodes in the middle, and Bob's your uncle.
Snow cones for everyone.
As for that last day of summer special, I think the team should just do what the SpongeBob movie did. That film was also full of finality, and as such, it takes place at the end of the series, with all of today's episodes just occurring before then. Similarly, for Phineas, the team can just place the original finale at the end of their childhood summers. That way, the newly ordered episodes can just take place before then. Effectively, this multi-year plan would make each summer about the length of 2 TV seasons. All this being said, whether there's multiple summers, a magical force, or no reason at all, I'll just be happy to see the brothers back in their element. However, since they've already done so much, it might still be tricky for the writers to think up new inventions. But to make things a little easier, there are a few plot points that the old crew left hanging, which could definitely be expanded on now. Like how in a later episode, Candace's friend Stacy learned that Perry was a secret agent, and agreed to keep his secret safe. The team never ended up doing something with this, and it'd be cool to finally see where it could go. Also, multiple episodes featured a side plot where Vanessa Doofenshmirtz dated the son of Major Monogram, known as Monty Monogram. This went on for a few episodes, even going past summer into Halloween. Of course, this plot didn't continue, but what's weird is that we know they had to break up at some point, because 10 years later, we learn that Vanessa ends up dating Ferb. So it'd be interesting to go back and see how things wrapped up with Monty. Another plot point that I think is guaranteed a follow-up is the Chronicles of Meat. This episode was about a cute crime-fighting alien, and it ended with a fake trailer for a sequel. It turned out many fans actually wanted to see it, so the show's staff decided to make it a real episode, and of course, they capped it off with yet another fake trailer. Seeing the team connect such random clips was hilarious, so doing it all again seems like an absolute no-brainer. Now, outside of the unfinished plot threads, I have a few ideas and wishes of my own. These are totally free to use, so if anyone from the show is watching, have at it. For a real oddball, I'd love to see some sort of follow-up to the infamous doppelgangers Thaddeus and Thor. Acting as the anti-Phineas and Ferb, it was pretty funny to see their contrast from the brothers, and even though they were rude, there's no doubt that they were certainly skilled builders, so maybe the team could dig deeper into this. Perhaps give them a redemption? Or how about make them act worse? Who knows? I also think it'd be cool to unravel the mystery behind Across random episodes, and even the movie, we learn that other people and businesses operate from inside his building, besides just Doof himself. I think it'd be fun to take some time and explore who these people are. Surely they must be crazy to stay there, among all the insanity that ensues each day. Another idea is if Doofenshmirtz had to pet sit Perry. A common gag in the show is how Doof doesn't recognize Perry without his hat, even in the most obvious moments.
Who are you? A platypus? Perry the platypus?
While we know Perry has to hide his agent life from the boys, it's also stated that he has to hide his home life from his nemesis. So what if Doofenshmirtz was tasked with pet-sitting Perry, leaving the agent with no choice but to stay undercover? They've done hints of something like this before, so it'd be neat to see a full plot on it.
Oh, there you are, Perry.
Perry?
Yeah, he's our pet platypus.
Is every platypus named Perry?
Speaking of, perhaps one episode could crazily combine all the main cast for a common goal. Maybe they must work together to get out of some shared mess. Just not a deserted island, since they already did that. To a humorous effect, tension could be high in this episode, as the cast all does their usual shticks, yet somehow still don't get caught by each other. The boys could be building something to get them all out, their dad sees it all and doesn't bat an eye, their mom misses the construction, then sees the machine at the end, but just assumes that the scientist built it. Doof fights Perry, while Perry switches back and forth to stay hidden, and of course Doof is none the wiser. Perhaps you could even throw Stacy in for semantics, since she's now one of the only people who knows his secret. Most of these characters are not meant to meet, so forcing them together could make for some interesting matchups. The real irony is that most of them will become family someday, so this could be a funny foreshadowing of future gatherings. Next idea, this is a weird one. What if Perry could talk? In one episode, Phineas and Ferb built a Perry translator, but never got any actual words from him. So what if they retried the idea, only this time they actually gave their pet the ability to speak? For the first and only time, we'd get to spend an episode with a talking Perry, who I imagine could still be voiced by his current actor, D. Bradley Baker. Not only was I surprised to learn that a human does that chatter noise, but Baker is also behind various other known voices.
Oy, let's make fun of the duck. Squilliam, fancy son.
Giving Perry a voice would be a great way to let him bond with the boys some more. In the first movie, among other instances, it's shown that he cares a great deal for Phineas and Ferb, and especially enjoyed the brief time he could be himself with them. Having a voice would let him be himself in a whole new way, though this time without giving away his role as an agent. However, evil never sleeps, so Perry still needs to sneak away and fight Doof. And oh man, there's no doubt that seeing Dr. D fighting a talking Perry would just be plain crazy, especially since Doofenshmirtz is known to give his own voice to Perry at times. Of course, this disappearance would be a bummer for the boys, who didn't even get to ask where he runs off to each day. I'm not sure how this episode would wrap up, but hopefully it'd be followed up by a few more pet bonding plots. I just love seeing Phineas and Ferb hang out with Perry whenever they get the chance. Removing Perry from the equation, I'd also like to see a few more Phineas and Ferb solo stories. Season 1 had a bunch of these, before the core friend group was established. The show as a whole is definitely better off with their friends, but the standalone brothersodes were fun too, and I wouldn't mind a few more. One unique way that they could do this is by doing a flashback episode to show how the two became stepbrothers when their parents got together. The series has shown that the boys built crazy things even as kids, so I can't help but wonder how they got their starts and what they first built together as a team. And lastly, something I think the team should totally do is bring back our boy Milo. We know Phineas and friends could have reappeared in Milo Murphy's Law, but that of course never happened, since the show wasn't picked up for more seasons. This cancellation was also a shame, since it halted any plot progress left in the show. So, by reversing the process, why not put Milo and friends back into Phineas and Ferb? They wouldn't need a lot of focus, maybe just an episode or two. It could be a good way to wrap up these character storylines, while also having some more fun with Murphy's Law. Since they all live in Danville, it could also be cool to see how the Milo cast further ties into the world. For example, in the first Phineas movie, we see a different dimension where a truly evil Doof has taken over Danville. So naturally, this must include Milo and friends, right? What were they up to in the second dimension? How does Murphy's Law tie into a world ruled by Doofenshmirtz? And how does our Milo react to Dictator Doof, considering that the Doof he knows is just a decent guy who lives on his couch? Yes sir, bringing Milo into Phineas packs a lot of potential. Of course, the staff could only do that if there's multiple years, since the Milo x Phineas crossover occurs after the initial summer. So let's discuss more about that multi-summer idea. What all could be done with this? Well, of course, I think it could lead to some new story ideas. Most notably, seeing the kids outside of summer. If multiple vacations passed for them, then it could be cool to show what happens in between those breaks and beyond. The show has already done this a few times, such as the aforementioned winter episodes, as well as a few set on Halloween. We've even seen the boys at school before, once in a dream sequence, and another time that was real, during the post-finale episode where Doof becomes a teacher. So yeah, let's see Phineas and friends in school. Normally the brothers make their summer as fun as possible, so why not let them do the same for class? I think this could be a really interesting switch-up. With the skills they possess, I'm sure that class with Phineas and Ferb would be lots of fun. I also think it could be a good message for kids about making the most of every situation, both in summer and in school. The series has often tackled summer nostalgia with a unique twist, such as theme parks, beaches, camping, picnics, and more. So, for elementary school, they can simply do the same. Just think of all the things the boys can put their spin on. School lunches, fancy pens, fun erasers, marker swords, collecting box tops, book fairs, rainbow parachutes, small scooters, Christmas programs. What about parent-teacher conferences? How do the boys avoid being busted there? There's also the first day of school, which, while many do dread it, it usually ends up being kind of fun, especially at that age. And oh man, you already know the boys would flip on the last day of school. If the Wildcats went as crazy as they did, then just imagine how Phineas and Ferb would act on their last day of school. It'd actually be a pretty fun way to start the new season. The show's formula wouldn't even need to change that much during elementary. If the staff decided on multiple years, with the season 4 finale concluding their childhood summers, then any school episodes could simply take place before then, allowing them to keep evil Doofenshmirtz year-round. This would make elementary school episodes similar in structure to the classic ones, with half the plot being Doof and the other half being Phineas. Just that now, the boys are twisting school traditions instead of summer ones. And besides, just because summer's over doesn't mean that they're always in school. There's also the evenings, the weekends, and other holidays to consider. While weekday episodes would mostly take place in the halls, weekend episodes could be just as free as ever. Only now, the kids can play with other seasonal traditions too. Fall could have twists on jack-o'-lanterns, hay rides, pumpkin patches, and large feasts. Winter has a whole world of sports to explore, many of which were mentioned in the Christmas theme songs. And spring could bring Valentines, Easter eggs, botanical gardens, and maybe even cherry blossoms. Simply put, going beyond summer would add a plethora of new ideas to the table. And the staff can have their cake and eat it too, because nothing says they're locked down to any time of year. Episodes could take place in any environment, whether it be summer, spring, school, or whenever. The show has never told its stories in order, with its plots constantly bouncing between the weeks of summer. So, if they added school and seasons to the mix, they could simply write them in as they please, just like most other shows. But they still need anywhere from 40 to 80 new plots. So, if they're still looking for more ideas, then perhaps they could get experimental and allow the characters to grow up some more. Take a few episodes to display the different dynamics of both middle school and high school, as well as their respective summers. To distinguish between the time periods, outfit variants could be used depending on their age and season, just like we saw in the main series. These altered appearances could serve as easy indicators of the timeline, much like they did in the Disney sitcoms. Just like before, there could be great storytelling potential here. Middle school welcomes kids to bigger buildings, more classes, being split from your friends. Perhaps we could see what happens when Phineas and Ferb are separated. Middle school also has marching bands, sports teams, sports games, pep rallies, spirit week, talent shows, school clubs. Thanks to Milo's show, it's easy to imagine what Finn and Ferb's life could look like in middle school. The real question is, what would it look like in high school? Well, thanks to Doof 101, we don't have to wonder, because we get to see a slice of life inside Vanessa's school. Even Phineas catches a glimpse outside, and admits that he can't wait to get to high school himself.
I can't wait till we get to high school. It looks like so much fun.
Of course, we know the real reason this looks fun is because Doof is their teacher. So just imagine if a few years later, Doofenshmirtz is still serving time as a teacher and ends up getting Phineas and friends in his class. These episodes would put the show's two driving forces together in a classroom of chaos. The characters are already acquainted too, thanks to the second movie, so it wouldn't be the first time they've worked together. The calamity would be crazy, but it can get even crazier, because picture this. What if Doofenshmirtz was still working undercover as Perry's partner? This would be especially interesting, as the two would need to work together whenever needed, and keep their secret hidden from everyone. Agent P needs to hide from the boys, while Agent D needs to hide from his class. This could all pave the way for a new formula, which is different, but just as structured as before, allowing each episode to still carry the same spirit, while still being fresh for the writers. Maybe we could see Perry and Doof fight some new villains, which we have seen a few times in classic Phineas episodes. But back to class. High school would also bring some new storytelling avenues. Now that they're older, the staff could introduce some more serious elements. Of course, there's also stuff like college prep and future planning to explore. It's already stated that Baljeet becomes an early college professor, Buford plans to join film school, Ferb plans to study in England, their neighbor Irving works for Alka's agency, even Candace goes into law school. So maybe we could explore the starts of these storylines to find out how they all got there. But of course, I think one of the biggest opportunities would be the chance to remedy some issues with Phineas and Isabella. As mentioned, we know that they never confessed to each other in school, which means that they missed out on meaningful moments like prom and such. And the real kicker is how they seem to grow distant by the end of it all. So maybe some high school episodes would allow the team to shed some light on the situation. While I doubt they'd consider retconning anything, it would be nice to show that the two are still friends throughout high school, and clearly still care for each other. As for the falling out, perhaps could be further explained as Isabella just genuinely being too busy to hang out during their last summer, which might have been the intent all along? I don't know, it's kind of hard to tell. But yeah, those are my ideas for the school episodes. I know I had a lot to say here, but even so, episodes like these wouldn't need to be as common as the normal ones. I think it'd be fine to treat them as some special events here and there to help pad out the new seasons. Either way, it'd just be cool to see the characters at different points in their lives. If the team felt really daring, they could even do a single episode showing the cast as fully grown adults. We actually got a taste of this already in an older episode where the kids traveled 20 years in the future. Here, we got to meet future Candace and her kids. It's also mentioned that Jeremy is her husband, and Stacy is the president of Uruguay somehow. Additionally, we get to see their mom, who mentions that the boys are now 30, with Phineas being in Switzerland for an award ceremony, and Ferb being at Camp David. These could all be interesting ideas to explore and expand on for a single episode. How did the characters reach these points? What are Phineas and Ferb's job as adults? Are they the ones who built the crazy tech of the future? Did the boys have kids of their own? Definitely lots of avenues to explore here. But besides that, that's everything I have to say. Again, I know myself and many others are really looking forward to the show's return, and I feel confident that whatever they end up doing, it's gonna be a lot of fun. So folks, hang tight, because next summer is gonna be a wild ride.